Well, hold on. I believe we are now ready to start. If you could all take your seats.
Rough start, huh?
Me too. Once again, if we could get to our seats. I apologize for the delay. We had some technology issues, which we have, I believe, solved. Okay, we're going to start in 30 seconds. Please take your seats. Welcome. Thank you. Okay. We are going to commence our steering committee meeting. I apologize for the delay. We came to the Global Center to make sure we are all socially spaced. We had a few issues on technology, but we have all those solved now, I believe. Let me begin with the call to order, and I'm going to take a roll call of the steering committee members. And let me first of all welcome our two new representatives from the city. Welcome to the steering committee. So I'm going to go around and call the names of the steering committee members, and if you can just respond that you are here, that would be great. We'll start Mr. Sweeney. Here. Mr. Gallagher. Judge Early. Ms. Bates. Here. Mr. Griffin. Here. As the alternative to the mayor. Mr. Griffin. This will be easy for me calling on Mr. Griffin. Here. Council President. Judge Celebrezzi. Judge Sheehan. Here. Mr. Lambert is here as the alternate to the county prosecutor. And let me point out the county prosecutor is on the Zoom. He's watching, but under state law, to have the meeting, the actual members have to be present in person. So he has all of the power is now with Dave Lambert. He's just watching. Mr. Lambert has all the power. Sheriff, here. Thank you. Ms. Bird. Good morning. And Mr. Budish. Here. Okay, we are all here present and accounted for. A couple of housekeeping points I want to make. Members of the steering committee, if you wish to speak on the microphones in front of you, when you push down, it will be green, and that means you are on a live mic. Push down again to turn it off, and let me remind you that we are on a live stream right now. So if you are going to have a side conversation, it will be a live mic if that green light is on. So please be mindful of that and keep your mics off unless you are speaking. In terms of other housekeeping, once again, public meeting. If you are here from the public, and I don't know if there's anyone here, but we have a sign-in sheet. If you wish to make a public comment, there's two opportunities for public comment. One is before we get to our determination about the design builder, and then there'll be a second opportunity for public comment after we come back from executive session. In terms of the agenda today, I'll take you very quickly through what we're going to be doing, and then we'll go back through it. We're going to start out with an update of status on the Correction Center project. Briefly, we'll talk about where we stand on the justice program improvements, interim central booking and diversion. We're then going to have, and I'm excited that we're going to have our first design presentation regarding the new correction center. While we don't know the site of it yet, And while the site does tell you about the overall building configuration, regardless of the site, we are designing the internal spaces. So you're going to see for the first time basically renderings of where our program is going in terms of what housing units are going to look like in various spaces. So that is going to be an exciting presentation, which HOK, our criteria architect, will present. I have the slides here. They'll be talking to us remotely. But we'll be going through that. And then I'm going to give you a review of where we are on project status and schedule. I particularly want to go through this again to remind everybody of where we are, and also to help bring our new members from the city just a little bit up to speed on the process. We are then going to talk about the next step in terms of completing our team, and that's the selection of the design builder. I'll remind you of what the role of the design builder is on the project. We'll talk a little bit about the selection process and what we went through, and then there'll be the consideration of the party that is proposed to be the design builder, which is a very large team led by Gilbane, Hunt, and others doing business with that team. The determination itself I put up here, but we'll go through and we'll vote on this determination. And we've always gone a little bit beyond what the MOU says. The MOU actually says that the steering committee only votes on the criteria for selection, but we've gone beyond that, and we're putting up the actual decision for a vote. Technically, it was not in the MOU, but we've gone that step beyond that step with the other consultants, and we're doing it again here today. We will then, I'll do a brief summary of where we are on site selection in the public session. And then I will ask for a vote to move into executive session, where we will continue the discussion and an update on where we are on the site selection due diligence process, returning to the meeting for additional public comment, next steps, and adjourn. So that is our process today of what we're going to go through. So let me begin with a status update on a couple of matters. First, we're going to talk about interim central booking. And Bob, Corey, I believe that you and Matt are going to be doing this. So if you want to come forward, and you can come to the podium, and there's a mic there, and we'll have your slides here. Yeah, that mic is live at the podium, right? And if you want to, I don't know if you can see the slides.
I brought the slide.
Okay, so I can just click them when you want me to change.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, mouse.
Jeff, can you tell him to stand up? I can't see him.
That's all right. My ego's as big as necessary to match. So as most of you already know, central booking is a focus in this part of the criminal justice system, from the point of arrest through the first appearance, which includes that first bond set in Cleveland Municipal Court. And so those processes are essential, and that's what we, it's a bit of a misnomer, central booking. The first phase is to work with the City of Cleveland, Cleveland Police Department, Cleveland Municipal Court, Cleveland Public Safety, Cleveland Prosecutor's Office, and of course, the Cleveland Department of Police in our phase one. Phase two would include all the other suburban municipal courts and police agencies. So what we have done to date, starting in earnest in April of last year, is we've completed our mission statement. We've identified our processes. And if you can go to the next slide, and then we'll go back to this slide. Oh, you're okay. Oh, we're doing construction. Okay. Matt, okay. So we'll do construction. Let's go back to the first construction slide. So what we have done is, We have completed construction. I apologize. I thought Matt was going to come after me to do construction, but I could just do them. So we completed construction.
You know, I can flip to the other slides and come back if you want me to.
Is Matt here? No, I'll just do
No,
it.
then you have to do
We'll
it.
just do them.
Okay.
So we've completed construction in our phase one, which is 90% of central booking, and allows us to be operational through effective March 31st. So construction is done right around the corner and should be completed. And if you can go to the next slide, you can see photographs. Let me go to the next slide on mine.
Well, here's the.
You can see photographs looking into the new booking area, right? That's on the left. The middle photograph is the Metro Health exam rooms, and there's new secure office space. So with their Metro Health, our partner, and how we treat our inmates in terms of their medical care, psychiatric care, is going to have two nice exam rooms. One in the front end, when the inmate first comes in to make a determination of whether they should be even taken into the jail. And then at the end, where they can do, right in central booking, a complete examination, including a mental health exam, where time permits. And the last one is inside the view, looking out at our video arraignment room. That video arraignment room is going to allow us to have a first appearance right in central booking into Judge Early's Cleveland Municipal Court. The ability for the public defender to be there and all the participants necessary to have a successful first appearance and a bond set right in central booking. Next slide. So the new property area is completed, is going to be completed soon, entering the new booking area in the middle. And a view, this looks back at the waiting area. So this is, we're going to have I think a 16 or 18 seat waiting area. So that in that first 8-hour period of time, the inmates could be there and available for public defender interviews, pretrial services interviews, etc., all right there before they ever have to be charged and, let's say, taking up into housing. So again, construction should be completed for 90% of the project, which allows us to go live on March 31st. Next slide. And now this is where I left off. If you can go to the next slide after that, the processes slide. So as important as the construction is, to make sure that all of those stakeholders that I've mentioned are on the same page and share the same mission with regard to central booking. And I'm happy to report that they do. The collaboration between City of Cleveland and the county agencies was nothing less than stellar. And there were some good policy debates and fights. And from that, we've sharpened the edges on our tool. And I think we're really ready to go on March 31st. This shows you the process mapping. So each color represent the individual processes of each agency and how we have made it so that they all work together. You can go back to the slide before. So in sum, we have completed our development of our processes, which you just saw. Each agency has identified their resource requirements. We've defined upon opportunities that were recommended to us by our consultants, consistent with best practices across the country, including common pleas, pretrial release, the ability to have inmates receive their bond, have electronic monitoring installed, the ability to have the city prosecutor and the county prosecutor right there together in central booking, which is for the first time allows them to review charges together, because perhaps the city prosecutor may at first blush look at a case as a felony, but by then talking to the prosecuting attorney for Cuyahoga County, they might collaboratively determine that this case is best kept in Cleveland Municipal Court, or perhaps diverted altogether to our beautiful diversion center. So the next step is, we had our bi-weekly meeting yesterday. The next step is for us to do a tabletop, to do a run through of all of these processes together to make sure that we continue to be aligned with what each of our expectations are of each other and ourselves, to see if there's any other opportunities for improvement, and then to make sure that we're ready on go live. That concludes the presentation, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Bob? One comment you're going to hear later today from Jeff Goodale is in Indianapolis. They are just opened their jail, their new jail, and they just opened their new central booking. And he's going to tell you about the dramatic results from just a few weeks ago until now, because with their central booking up and running and their systems running, it's made dramatic results in their turnaround and several other things. So Jeff is going to comment on that. He has some numbers and statistics about what happened there when they implemented it. So thank you, Bob.
Well, hopefully that sets the bar for us. Thanks,
Right.
Jim. Yeah.
At this point then, Brandy Carney is going to have a few, there you are, a few words about diversion. What's going on there?
Good morning, everybody. Brandy Carney, Director of Public Safety and Justice Services for the county. I just have two brief slides for an update on diversion and happy to answer any questions. As most of you know, we opened up the Diversion Center in May of 2021 for individuals with substance abuse disorder and or those suffering from a severe mental illness. At the time of opening, the only criteria that was allowed to bring someone or enter the Diversion Center was law enforcement, local law enforcement in lieu of arrest. So a low-level crime was committed and they take an individual to the Diversion Center. That primary mission, we still keep that primary mission. That's the goal, is for law enforcement officers to bring individuals to the Diversion Center in lieu of arrest. But in October of this year, we did expand the criteria for entry. We now allow for any public safety officer can bring someone whether or not a crime was committed, family and friend referrals, self-referrals, and even referrals or drop-offs from agencies such as Downtown Cleveland Alliance. The interactions that they have are often with individuals like who we're speaking of that need these services. And then just a note, the process still maintains that we currently have, in that anyone coming to the Diversion Center must first call the 24/7 hotline that's staffed by Frontline. Those are social support individuals. They can help triage the call. It might be better served for that individual to be taken to the hospital. It might make more sense for them to not be taken anywhere and for the hotline to send out the mobile crisis team, or they would recommend taking them to the Diversion Center. We've had since May, since opening, 241 clients. Of those, 144 from law enforcement. 93 of those are in lieu of arrest, and I apologize, we're missing 51 were brought by law enforcement without a crime being committed since the new criteria was expanded, and 97 since the October change of family and friend, self, or agency referral. 110 clients referred on to continued treatment services. Just a note that the Diversion Center is for acute care, so often for substance abuse disorder, that's detoxification, which is an average of 5 to 7 day stay. Mental illness stabilization, it might be up to 9 days, but no longer than that to someone stay at their diversion. But we do recommend and transport, and if individuals, which often do need a longer residential stay, that's something that we'll continue to support them through. The average length of stay in November of this year was 4.5 days for individuals. Just a couple of quick metrics. We do have a long list of metrics that we receive updates. The county receives those updates monthly from individuals that staff the hotline, as well as the Diversion Center and the crisis intervention training. And that's something that our diversion board also evaluates that data. We've trained 716 law enforcement officers on CIT since March of last year. CPD, I'm very thankful for Mayor Bibb and city leadership came out to the Diversion Center last Friday. Within an hour, showed their support, put out a release, made some changes to policy. So very thankful to them, and look forward to hopefully working with them on increasing some of the training that's offered, the CIT training to officers. And so the word gets out there so that these beds are used for the resource. And again, just countywide, 18 of the 58 municipal police departments have brought individuals. That's another goal I want to focus on, making sure all of those police departments are receiving the training and using this resource. And then I noted some of the other police departments that have also used it that aren't Muni. RTA is actually the biggest user and have had fairly high numbers that they bring individuals to the Diversion Center for services. So happy to answer any questions. And if not, have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Okay, that now leads to our next conversation, which is going to be where we stand on conceptual design. And before we turn to that, I have one slide. Those who have been with us for a long time have seen this slide before. I just want to, and we're going to go through schedule and process a few different ways today, but this is just kind of a reminder of where we've been and where we are. From the time that we started up the project, initially, we selected the programmer and we went through a process of programming and project definition. And this was side by side. This was everything in the Justice Center. This was corrections. This was the courts. And we developed space standards for everything, operations, adjacencies, and went through a long process. What is in red are some of the things that are yet to be done. But we went through, and at the conclusion of that process, what we ended up with is a series of determinations. We'll talk a little bit more about them later, but with the go-ahead to continue on with the design of the correction center, the jail and sheriff's administration facility. We made a couple important decisions. We looked through 9 configurations of various ways we could use the old Justice Center, that we would build new, renovate, and based on 13 meetings that we had and hundreds of working group sessions, came to the conclusion that we are looking at a new correction center outside of the downtown core area, not a high-rise building, but a mid-rise to low-rise campus-type facility. We decided that the courthouse needed to be maintained in the downtown core. We still have not made the determination or decision as to whether the rest of the court functions are a new build or whether it's a renovation. Those are still and we're going to return to that on February 10th, by the way. But we made the decision to move forward with the jail project. And there was an initial program that was done. It was posted and it was accepted. At that point in time, we were authorized to start looking at the site selection process. And we retained our criteria architect to take us through the next level of design. That is the HOK team. So what has happened since that time is HOK has been on board. And they've been doing 2 things really simultaneously. They've been going through a program confirmation process. Even though we developed the initial program, you have to confirm it. You got to test it. One thing which is different, frankly, is that both our sheriff and our jail administrator were not there when we did the original program. They've been very involved in meetings to tweak the program, to make sure it fits. We've also had to talk about our numbers, which I did at the last few meetings, and where we are on numbers and what we are building to. So we are tweaking and confirming the program. At the same time, simultaneously, we are commencing the design activities that we can, which is the schematic design process. We can take schematic design so far until it becomes site specific. There's a lot of design we can do that doesn't necessarily depend on the site. At a point in time, it becomes site specific. So right now, we're going to show you things that are going to be incorporated into the jail project, regardless of what site we go to. But once again, there's a point in time when we do have to get site specific. So what we're going to show you now is the outcome of the initial design effort of HOK, which is to say program confirmation and also initial concepts, and particularly with housing areas that have come out of the effort that we have had so far, which has been an intensive effort. This is going to be a test of our technology, which begins with the fact that my clicker stopped working, which is not good. Okay, hold on. So now let me ask Jeff Goodale and Jason, can you hear me and can you speak up?
Yes, can you hear me now? Jeff, can you hear me? I've unmuted.
Jeff and Jason? We should be hearing them now on the
Yeah,
Zoom.
I'm unmuted.
There's 5 participants on Zoom. We can see that. Jeff Goodale,
Yeah, I'm
Can you hear
trying
me?
to speak.
we can see your mouth moving. You can hear me, we can't hear you. See if we can solve that.
Jeff Goodale, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jason.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Wait, Jeff. We can hear
Yeah.
you now, Jeff.
Yeah, you can. Okay.
Okay, and Jeff, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so are you moving the screen?
No, you're doing it. You've got control of the PowerPoint, Jeff.
Oh, okay. All right, Jeff, go ahead and you can start through the presentation. We may or may not, hey guys, if we want to move Jeff's, the faces off, let's see how it goes. We may want to move that off the screen, but let's
You
start
want me
with
to do that? I
being
can
able to see
just stop
Jeff.
I can just stop the video too. So,
All right, yeah, Jeff, why don't you just go ahead and then just say next when you need a screen change.
all right, that's fine. So Jason and I are going to just talk about where we're at, and as Jeff mentioned, we don't have a specific site yet. We have some site parameters. We're looking at different areas, but we've been looking at how this program could fit onto a variety of different sites, and independent of the site, there's a lot of issues that we have been working through with the Sheriff's Department, working through with the other participants from the county and PMC as well. As a reminder from the last meeting, we had talked about the critical issues under discussion, and we had talked about how we have a contiguous sheriff administration with the jail facility, and we're continuing with that. In fact, I think that's proving to have some real advantages as we look at different sites. It gives us a lot of flexibility in different sites by doing just that. Secured parking, I think critical to have staff be in safe, secure parking, and visitors to be able to be processed through secure parking. So parking is a major element for security of the overall facility. So again, that's going to be site specific, but we definitely have criteria in mind for that. I think very importantly, the customized bed types align to the inmate population, and that's what we're going to show a few examples of here shortly. But there is not a one size fits all, and the steering committees recognize that. We have general population, but we really have a very intensive need for mental health treatment. And I think one of the things we've also recognized from the pandemic was the Sheriff's Department really developed a better way to process new arrestees into the facility. And so the housing that we were developing in this program really addresses that, I think, much more acutely than the previous initial program did. Specialized intake and assessment, we'll talk about that a little bit. Bob did give the update on where you're at with your central booking. There's some great lessons learned there that we're incorporating. We have modified the sheriff's program. What we had at the beginning was kind of an overview sheriff's program. We've really done a deep dive with the sheriff now to produce a program that really is going to meet the operational needs. We continue to benchmark against similar projects, and the way that we do that is the square foot per bed, the dollars per bed that we're looking at, and we continue to do that, and we welcome having the design builder on board to assist us with that. And then the first appearance court replaced by video. So all of those things are being done, and what you see is an example of a facility that I think we've looked at as a model from San Mateo, California, as one model. As an example. In the meantime, we've also gone on a couple of tours. We visited a newer facility in Nashville that HOK was involved in, and then one in Raleigh, North Carolina, that I was involved in a few years ago as further examples. So a group has looked at new facility at those facilities, and we're coming back with lessons learned as we incorporate them into the design.
And when
Next
when he
one,
says
Jeff.
we've gone on, when he says we've gone on tours, that was the project team. So we had
Yes.
the various members of the project team went on the tours.
Next one, Jeff, please. Jason, maybe if you wouldn't mind, you can just kind of talk about where we're at on total program currently and where we stand.
Yeah, so the program validation effort that we've been doing over the last few months, as Jeff Applebaum alluded, we took the original program, which was developed and approved, and I've been working with the various user groups, the sheriff, to just validate what was previously published. Is it still accurate? Is it germane? Are there any changes to be made? And we've gone through space by space, department by department, looking for efficiencies. One that Jeff Goodale mentioned, the sheriff's administration being contiguous to the jail allows us to omit certain redundant spaces because they're able to be shared by the jail administration and the sheriff's department. So we're starting to see a number of efficiencies in the program, and you can see down at the bottom the 847,000 gross square feet. We've actually reduced the total program square footage needs for the building. You'll also see towards the bottom of the page, we are anticipating the need for parking, structured parking. And we've worked with the various departments to define the need there. So overall, it's a validated program that aligns to both the jail and the sheriff's operational needs, the bed counts that are anticipated being needed. And I will remind everyone, the building is being constructed with the core spaces being sized for the opportunity to expand in the future if it's ever needed, so that infrastructure is in place so that could occur without interruption to the ongoing services of the facility.
Next
Next
one,
slide.
Jeff. Yeah. You know, as I mentioned before, the house, and really we're going to talk more specifically about housing in today's presentation. And a subsequent presentation, we will have more of the overall design looked at as we are able to get more site specific. But as I mentioned before, we are looking at a great variety of different housing. Intake housing has an acute need to be able to process people that are in. We've increased the amount of mental health specific beds, and what that means is some best practices with mental health of having things on one level without the mezzanine that you see for other general population, having those located as closely as possible to the clinic and to the other medical professionals, having it also located, if we can, by the intake of the facility, because all of those things work together as far as the screening and being able to really triage where people belong. Within that mental health, acute mental health, special needs chronic, and special needs transition. And so all of this housing will address things such as addiction, severe mental health, and certainly also with space within for professionals to come in and provide counseling. So, again, should people be in the jail? Should they be somewhere else? All those things can be constantly reviewed as somebody is in housing. Beyond that, we have more of the traditional minimum, medium, maximum, restrictive housing, which is also for could be for people that have different that might actually need protective custody, or they may have particular restrictive things, like they may not be able to have phone use, those types of things. We have youthful housing that is going to be located in a way that will have sight and sound separation from all adults within the facility. An infirmary with 36 beds, and then medical detox and medical beds. So I think, again, the big emphasis, there was an emphasis in the prior program on medical, on mental health, but I think that's even been increased in this program verification as we've had more time since the pandemic started to really look at the bed needs of the detention center. Next one, Jeff. Bob Corey showed a diagram before that was hard to decipher. I'm going to do the same thing here, but I think what we are pointing out here is that there's just so many different components to a modern detention facility, and again, also put together with the sheriff's building. But what you can see in the red rectangle at the top are all those different housing units. And one of the tricks, and I know Jason, you've been working on this with me as well, is that even though there's different needs in those, is we are still trying to come up with a more regular type of housing unit that can be flexible and meet those needs. And for the construction side, that makes a big difference. Maybe Jason, you can just talk about the advantages of having that consistency in housing unit type as we look at construction.
Yeah, so what Jeff's alluding to, we call it modularization, making each of those housing units easily able to be replicated on the site, eases the construction for the labor force that's going to be out there actually erecting the structure. It gives them an opportunity for repetitive. So once you get it right and sign off on the first one, then it's just an ability to compare as you go forward. It also streamlines our structural system. There's a speed of construction that comes from being modular. So yeah, the programming team has been working very diligently to refine the specific needs to then fit within these modulars and still keep the program square footage wise on target for where we need to be from a cost perspective.
Next one, Jeff. Specifically, one of the areas in addition to housing we've really been working on has been intake and booking, central booking. And you all have worked on a lot of processes to get central booking right in your current one. And so we're looking at some of those lessons learned. Plus on the tours, what you see here is the open booking area in Nashville, and looking at how that can work and how that can really better serve your needs in the county. One of the key things with this open booking approach is the ability to have people wait in an area, and then all the different services that they need, as far as whether that's screening, whether that's property exchange, whether that's first hearing, whatever those things can be. You're not held up by a flow. You're able to access everybody as you go here. And Jeff Applebaum alluded to the fact that our new facility in Indianapolis has just opened within the last couple of weeks, and they are now in the booking process dramatically. In their old facility, which wasn't really that old, it was about 15 years old, but it was retrofitted into an older building. The booking process took anywhere at a minimum of 2 hours to get somebody booked to 4 hours. And they are averaging now, in fact, they're not just averaging, they're saying it's really max now, 35 minutes to get somebody processed into the facility. And I think it's not just the amount of time, but that's dramatic, and that takes less staff to get that many people through. So there's a staff savings there's efficiency, but also, almost half of the people that come in are typically released within the first 48 to 72 hours. So that helps that process move along as well. If they can get their bond or whatever that is, or get them to arraignment, and they're not held up unnecessarily just by the facility inefficiencies, and they're able to move through. One other thing that was true in Indianapolis that was a major issue was that people that were released just because of trying to get the paperwork through and everything, they could spend an additional 2 days at the jail before they could actually be released onto the street. That's now been completely eliminated. So when somebody's released, they're released immediately. So, and it wasn't just the building itself, it was the ability then to incorporate the new technology and the ability for the courts and the sheriff's department to talk to each other more. So all of those things have been improved dramatically. And so they're seeing, within the first couple of weeks, an immediate impact. And I think, with the new central booking you're doing, and then the one that we'll incorporate into this facility, Cuyahoga County should benefit in that same way. Next one, Jeff. Just a couple of other examples, from the tour. This is that's a public lobby on the left that you see, and that's kind of along the way that we're looking at for this facility as a combined public lobby for the sheriff and the jail. But I think what you see is a really open, community facing type of facility. On the right is a staff break area. It's really important that staff, who is really your most important resource, has the ability to have good facilities. They will want to work there. Absenteeism comes down, morale goes up demonstrably with a new facility, and that's great for your workforce, and it is also great economically. So you know, especially today, the ability to recruit and keep good people is a really critical need. And so the facility can really help in that way. Next one, please. So one of the ones we're going to talk about, we're just going to talk about a couple of the examples. One of the ones, and this is a very common one within our facility, is a 48 bed unit, and 48 beds is prescribed by the Ohio, Department of Corrections as a max amount of inmates in a unit. So that's a governing factor in this plan. But 48 beds, double bunked in one unit, direct supervision, as we've talked about. You can see that it includes outdoor rec. You can see that it includes seating. There's an area there for video visit, for other visitation, for inmate phone. That's the white furniture that you can see in the lower left. Large multi-purpose room attached. That's the salmon colored in the bottom left, and other functions all along that left side that serve the residents that are in that unit. You can see that there's a lavender workstation there. That's still a little bit in flux where we're going to put that. We're going to work closely with the sheriff's department, and you'll see some 3D views that will help us make the right determination of where the best place for that to land is. And then, as I referenced before, this is a mezzanine style housing. You'll see this better in the rendering, but you can see it's 2 levels. It's very efficient for housing. And we actually have more residents upstairs and downstairs. One of the things that was determined on the tours and we're incorporating the design is that all showers and other wet functions related to that are going to happen down on the lower level. That's good for construction. It's also going to be good for maintenance. It's going to be great for supervision. Sometimes those showers are upstairs, but in this case, we've made a decision to keep all that downstairs. Next one, please, Jeff. You can see just an axonometric of what that looks like. Again, the 2 stack, and you can see there's a catwalk that goes along there where the upper level is. And we'll just go to the next one here. We'll go through a series of different views here. I think one other thing that's an important component. This is the view of a typical cell. You can see that it's safe. It is designed for anti-ligature. It is designed to be safe. It's designed to be clean. It's designed for cleanliness. So, the way that the desk is attached to the wall, the way the bunk is attached to the wall, the way these other things are attached to the wall, they're seamless. And so the ability for dirt, microbial infection, that type of thing is really reduced in this kind of a design. And it's also high security in that no matter what the inmate classification is, this is a very durable type of living unit, and it has been shown to have very low maintenance issues as time goes on. On the right is a typical kind of mechanical chase. This is really important for your facility management folks at the facility to be able to access. You can see in the cell the front of the toilet, but here you can see the controls of the back of the toilet, the plumbing. So if there's an issue, and there are issues that are caused in these facilities, you can go to this mechanical chase and quickly make the fixes without having to be in the secure area. It's a really big improvement for the facility management folks, and we've been working with them as well in this planning. Next one, Jeff. And we're just going to go through some different views, but I think one of the things that you can see here is our effort to get daylight, an effort to get a normalized facility in. We've got resilient carpet. We have furniture that is not doesn't have the appearance of being a really hardened kind of prison thing that you often see. You can see we're able to even incorporate exercise equipment within the unit, and you can see how the outdoor rec is in that kind of that center portion there. With the windows to the upper right, the ability to really get daylight into this, and then the lighting and the ceiling grid that you see up above are commercial, so they really help with acoustics. And again, they are much less expensive because they're out of the reach of the residents. They're much less expensive than a lot of the security ones that traditionally, had to be put in these facilities. They can actually cost as little as 20% of what a security fixture is, without at all impacting the security. This is a very secure envelope, and we've worked very closely with the sheriff's department and with Rhonda Gibson, who's jail administrator, to look at how to really maximize, the security, but also to make it a normalized environment as much as we can. Let's look at the next one, Jeff, if we would. Just another view. One of the things you can see here, though, is the way that the mezzanine is treated. And we have a handrail up there. In addition, we're going to incorporate a netting up above that will be attached to a soffit. And that's just one more security element that really, would keep people from either trying to jump off that railing or to push somebody off the railing. So again, it's just one more element that we're incorporating in to make it a safer facility. You can also see, little details like the stairway. In this kind of occupancy, we're able to see, between the treads, so it really maximizes sight lines and what you can see. Let's go to the next one, Jeff. And this is a view from up there. So this is a view from up in the stairs back down into that. There's some buildings in the background. We don't actually know where this is going. Those are just there as a vignette to have an idea what you might see from there. Some views, that could be from the mezzanine to the real world outside, which can be important. Again, we don't know what that background will really look like yet because we don't have the site. Next one. Another view, this would be really from the guard, from the correctional officer station, where the station's located here. But I think wherever that station ends up, you have a really commanding view of the entire unit. So it's really makes it easier to manage because you can see all the residents and you can see what's going on. You can hear what's going on. And that very much lends to a safer environment for the overall group. Next one. Another view again where the exercise equipment could be and could be located with the outdoor recreation. We're showing a wood look door too, by the way. That's also, whether that door would be steel or wood, it could be either, but it will have a more normalized kind of look to it. And studies have shown that a more normalized look with this daylight really has real positive effects on the way these facilities operate and the safety issues. Next one, please, Jeff. This is a view just to that outdoor recreation. And one of the things we're looking at is really a secure wall, but maybe with, maybe incorporating some diffused glass that could then let in more daylight in there. So we're looking at, we still have a ways to go on design, but we're looking at different options to maximize those benefits. Next one, please.
Yeah, by the way, one comment I'll make, you may be questioning the dress of the individuals. The computer programs do not have the proper dress available to put on these individuals. So although I understand there's actually some jails, you can comment on this, in the country right now that have gone to non-prison dress or non-jail dress.
So
but that's why
some areas are using more street dress, Jeff. That's true. But to your point, the entourage in our computer program doesn't have folks in jumpsuits. So that's why you're seeing individuals in t-shirts and long pants. Next one, if you would.
Right.
And again, this is just the view from that outdoor rec back into the unit. And I think the point being here that, again, with the shared daylight, very important, but also just the ability to see the entire unit and to see what everybody's doing really at any given time. And the fact that we can co-locate this recreation and visitation and everything else together in one unit cuts down the amount of resident movement throughout the overall building, which improves safety and really improves efficiency for the staff.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Michael.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Jeff, what we've learned throughout the pandemic, and I know Cullen will probably add to this, is and I'm sure it's going to even be heightened with a facility that's no longer located next to the courthouse. But what we have come to find is that there needs to be private rooms, I assume located within that block there, for defendants to have private Zoom discussions with both for the court, which, as you know, I think we're looking at transporting several hundred people a day. But what seems to be needed is an ability for defense attorneys to privately have Zoom meetings with their clients in that pod And given the fact we're talking about roughly 48, and ideally, in an ideal world, we also have these individuals who could Zoom to the courthouse to try to reduce transportation. Because my understanding is we're looking at transporting several hundred people a day, and obviously everybody that we can keep in the pod is one less transport for the day. But having some type of private facilities for these defendants to have these type of private discussions with their attorneys and to be able to Zoom into the courthouse in a safe, secure, private, confidential way.
We actually, Jeff,
where it's going to be implemented, have we taken the lessons we are learning even every day and begun to implement this into the design? Because, and I'll let Colin if you want to add further, but I do know from people within the defense community, that's one of the drawbacks they're really having is the lack of ability to do so.
Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, could you go back to the plan a few slides back? Because Mr. O'Malley, we in fact have incorporated that into the design. And if you can see in the upper left area there, and it's a little hard to read on this, but there is a non-contact visit and a contact visit, and that also includes the video capability. So that is an enclosed private room away from all the other residents. And then you have the ability to actually have a non-contact visit with somebody else within there as well. So it has a multi-purpose function, but one of the functions is to have that video capability directly to the courts or with an attorney.
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is, I don't know, given that the pods may house 48 people, I don't know that 2 is going to suffice.
Okay, well, that's something we can definitely look further at and look at what that capability needs to be. And we're still early enough that we can make some adjustments if we need to.
I mean, if you do the math, if they're looking to transport 200 people a day and there's only 1,500 people in here, you can do the math fairly easily on that. That we may need a lot of rooms for private video, if in fact we want to reduce transport.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, in some of the other similar facilities, we've had 1 or 2 units that are co-located in the unit for just that, and it does reduce the amount of transportation. And in fact, and I don't know what the technology capability will be in the courthouse, but in the new ones that we are, currently getting built with the court and the jail, built at the subsequent time, you can do a status hearing. The judge can do a status hearing from their chamber with a resident that's actually living in this unit without anybody having to move. So as we go, your point is well taken. We will continue to look at, what do those numbers look like and what kind of facility do we need to have to accommodate, the required amount of private areas. There's also non-private, but I know that those wouldn't be appropriate for hearings or confirmation. But the point about the non-private is that other visitation and so forth can happen in the day space, while we reserve the private rooms for the for consultations and for hearings. So it's a good point, and we'll continue to look at what that right number is to accommodate that and to cut your transportation.
Yeah. One point I want to make, particularly for those who are new in the process, the key to all this, in the current jail, you have to transport everybody to go everywhere. You don't have recreation, you don't have the visitation rooms, you don't have the medical room. None of these are located in the housing pod. So in our current jail, you have to have manpower and staff. While someone is still staffed doing direct observation, you have to walk people through the jail, multiple floors, up different buildings, elevators. So the whole essence of this, aside from quality of life and everything else, is this is a tremendously more efficient operation. I just want to make sure everyone keeps that in mind as a core principle.
Jeff, this is Colin. Just to build on what Mike was saying, one thing that's not clear from this, and I know it's still early, is obviously Zoom visitation is important, but in-person contact visitation is also critical. And are you envisioning those same spaces to be used for in-person attorney visits? And
if you look at the chart, and I don't know if you can see it there, you'll see where it says there's both contact, and it should say contact and non-contact visitation. That's why you have the ability, and I shouldn't say contact, it's non-contact, but it's both Zoom and also the ability for someone to come in through the vestibule into the one side of the room while the individual's coming in the other side. So you can have the ability to do both in these rooms.
Okay. And I'm just looking at it. I think there's 96 people potentially in that. So, I mean, I do think 2 rooms, because it's going to have to accommodate court hearings and attorney visits. It's going to be far
There's a
insufficient.
total of 48.
There's 24 cells with 48 beds.
24 cells, a maximum possible 48 by state law.
Oh, okay.
No, these are excellent comments. And we agree that we have to make the accommodation for a variety of different visitation styles, whether it's video, whether it's contact, or whether it's non-contact. And it's also important that we work with the sheriff's department on where all of those can happen, because the contact visitation is not really desired often to happen here at the unit. So, we're looking at where is there a visitation place where a resident can be brought to, because we don't really want to bring, as you can imagine, we don't want to bring a lot of people into the heart of the detention center. Like to be able to move the resident to that contact visit area, and minimize the amount of people that actually come into the heart of the detention center. I think also importantly here too, with the multi-purpose and what we're showing as medical distribution, everything, there are other multi-function areas for other interviews, for counseling, and for other functions that can happen within the unit as well. So it's really being set up for a lot of interaction with staff and volunteers to be able to come and go and to be able to deliver these services live, and also by video capability as well within the unit. So Jeff, maybe we can go back to the end of that. I don't know if you could turn over control. I could show the 3D.
Why don't we try that? Let's try that at the end.
Try it at the end, no problem. All right, let's keep,
I'm not sure if
keep
it's going
going
to work.
then. Okay, I'm with you. So, okay, we looked at this one, and again, this is one more view from a control station. And then now this is a unit that we've been working with the sheriff's department that is single beds, 48 again, max. So that's by necessity a larger unit. It has the same number of showers, it has the same other number of functions, but it is single beds, and this is for a more restrictive type of population. And you can see that the outdoor rec area is a little bit different configuration than what the other one was. And we're bringing in, and you'll see from the render, we're bringing in more daylight from that end condition. But this is by necessity a larger unit, but we're really trying to work to keep it within that same kind of module as the other one, so we can have the consistency in construction as much as possible. But this unit then has 48 beds that are all single in a cell. And I know from a security standpoint, the sheriff's department and the jail administrator feel that that gives them their best security option for residents that really need to be housed that way. Next one, if you would, Jeff. And the axonometric of that one, I think what's important also, I showed you before the picture of the mechanical chase, and you can see the long elements on either side of this unit. Those would be the mechanical chases. Those are the areas where that mechanical equipment, the air, the water, electronics all are that are outside of that secure perimeter of the housing. And then the housing unit is certainly within that. And then that outdoor rec brings in that daylight. Let's go to the next one, Jeff, if you would. And this is a view of what that unit would look like. Where we can also have these units on a top floor, we can bring in even more daylight, perhaps through skylights. We haven't really determined exactly where these go, but here you can see the station is now more centered, and it looks, again, looks across the whole area, but this is a larger day space, and again, with more resident rooms in it. And we've made the effort to bring in more daylight at that from that end condition. Next one. And then this is just the view back. So this is back from that rec and then looking back towards what you would see. Importantly, and this is one of the lessons, from the tours, is that control station is located in a way there's no activity really happening behind them. So they are able to keep all the activity of the residents in front of them within the unit, and that's an improvement again on safety for the sheriff's staff. Next one. And then this is the view of that outdoor space. You can see we've kind of toyed with the idea of having a planter there. We're not too really sure we could really have plantings in there, but we are looking at different ways to incorporate biophilia if we can, to incorporate nature if we can in a safe way into the facility that would be away from the residents, but also in a way that people can benefit from, because again, that's another benefit. So how we treat that outdoor space and what kind of furnishings we might have, those types of things are things we're all testing right now, working with the sheriff's department to make determinations on. Next one, Jeff. And this is just another, actually, I think this is a save unit. I think we've replicated this one. Let's go one more here. And, oh, I'm sorry. So this is at one level. So if we'll just stay here on the axonometric. So this is on one level. And as I mentioned before, this desire to have mental health or people with acute mental health issues be on one level, not be on a mezzanine. And so in a limited fashion, we are having these single story units. And this is a view of what the single story unit would be. And again, it has kind of the same approach as the other, but it's only on one level. So it's just fewer beds in it, as opposed to the 48 on double. But if we look at the next one, Jeff, you can see, and this is a 48 bed with cubicles. This is a dormitory style, same general layout, but this is dormitory. So the bed areas, and you'll see it better in the rendering, the bed areas are more open. And this is for a population that's been deemed that they don't need to be locked in a room, and that they have more common type of toilet facilities. So you can see one common bathroom area that's in the yellow at the top. The showers are on the other side, and that these bed units are more open and not in locked rooms. Next one, please. And then the axonometric of that. You can see it's in the same module as we had for the cells, but so we're able to use the same footprint, and that gives us a lot of flexibility in how these things can be stacked and put together. Next one. And then this is a 24 bed cubicle with that same kind of outdoor rec. So again, this really does sum up the different types of housing that we are incorporating here and how we're able to work these different things around. Now this is for fewer beds in one level. And again, based on classification, there are times that the sheriff's department doesn't want to have as many people in a unit. So this is a 24 bed unit. That's a dormitory. And this might be for a more acute type of mental health, or a more acute type of a minimum security. But again, it gives them the flexibility to have these variety of different bed counts and different approaches, again, with using a common kind of module. Let's look at the next one if we would. And then the axonometric of that. Well, let's go to the rendering, I think. And again, these are some of the views. This is the one level. Again, we'll work with the ceiling areas. We'll work with, how to incorporate even more daylight as we go here. But this is, again, just a typical kind of control view. You can see to the doors that are closer are actually shower doors. And so the showers are individual. And those doors are anti-ligature. So as somebody's in there, that shorter height on the door, the area at the bottom allows staff to see how many people are in there, what kind of activity is there without actually impinging on their privacy rights. But that happens closer to the station. But again, that is a different kind of door that is more conducive to that shower kind of environment, and also made for durability. Again, it's a wetter conditioned shower. Next one, please. Just another configuration, and this one then shows that different rec down at the end, or I'm sorry, this goes back and sees that station and looks at the multi-purpose. So this is back from the rec side, looking back into the unit, and you can see very clear lines of sight throughout this entire day space. Next one. And I mean, this is some of the ideal. This was in Nashville. This was a mental health one level unit. And ultimately, as we further refine the design, the ability to get more daylight in, what we do with furniture. Those are all areas of further refinement that we're not at yet. We're ready to, we're ready to start moving into that. We're working with the sheriff's department to make sure we've got the right type of modules, the right type of units. But as we go, ultimately, the refinement of these areas could look something like this, where there's really ample daylight and more kind of normalized type of furniture, floor coverings, that type of thing. But this is, especially for those one level units, something along this is more of an ideal that I think, we're moving towards that kind of refinement on. So Jeff, I think that wraps up what we have to show on.
Jeff, I have a question, Jeff.
Please.
Brendan Sheehan here. How are you? Listen, interesting views and interesting designs. One of the things that we learned during this pandemic is, and what we realized in our jail is isolation, medical isolation spots for inmates. And have you guys designed anything in regards to the medical side of this area for, I mean, God forbid, another type of pandemic or breakout in the jail where there's isolation beds and units that they can go to that we can prepare for future, God knows, pandemics?
Absolutely. And so actually there's a couple of different strategies. And we haven't really taken the design very far in the medical unit yet, so I really didn't have anything prepared to show, but we do have programmed in isolation cells that are negative air pressure, that if you do intake somebody, in fact, that has been tested, and they can be placed in that area. In addition, the increase in the classification housing is able to break down that as well. And so I think one improvement, with this facility from what you're dealing with right now is the many more units and the ability to actually place people more specifically in either isolation or in a unit where you may have a few people that have got a communicable disease. And one other element I think that's going to be a major improvement here, in fact I know it is that each of these housing units, no matter what they are, general population, have its own air intake and its own air exhaust. So there's no shared air for any of these housing units throughout the facility. They're all uniquely intake of air and exhaust of air, which also is incorporated into the necessary smoke control that's in the building for life safety. But some of the point of that being is that in jail design, with the onset of MRSA that happened a number of years ago, we've been very cognizant of dealing with communicable disease and isolating populations and being able to break them up into different groups. And so this design is going to do that exactly. So there are isolation cells specifically in medical that are being planned, but even at that, every unit within the facility is going to have the ability to isolate air. I think very importantly, when the next pandemic happens, and they do happen more frequently than they used to, it's important that you have a detention center that can be operated business as usual as much as possible, and that you don't have to make extraordinary changes to it when the next potential wave hits. And that's the way that that's a resiliency thing that is being designed into this facility. So it's an excellent question you raised.
Good, thanks. And then the other thing is there any reason when you looked at the attorney conference rooms or the visits, could they be different? Instead of having just one room, could you have different levels in that area? So there could be more than, when I was looking at it, we were thinking having 2 floors or 3 floors of attorney visit rooms rather than just one room, and that to open up more Zoom rooms and more attorney visits.
Yeah, I think there's, we actually, as we're going through the design, we do have some space opportunity on the upper mezzanine levels to incorporate more of that kind of a room. And the addition of the technology is actually that's not a big deal. Once you've introduced the technology into the unit, to have 2 or 3 stations as opposed to one is not a big impact on cost. So yes, I think there are opportunities for us to look at some multiple rooms as opposed to the single or even the 2 that we're showing right now, to have more opportunity for that kind of consultation room.
I want to point out something. We are at a conceptual stage. These are not even close. I mean, we are just at the very beginning of schematic design. So these are ideas and concepts. This will all change. There's a tremendous amount of input yet. from the sheriff, from Rhonda, from everybody. So don't think that this is anything that is cast in stone right now. We're just giving you an early look at programmatic concepts. We're keeping you informed. So nothing that you have seen represents the final finished product. So I just want to make that absolutely clear.
Yes. I got a remark. It looks like the jail capacity is set up for 1,904. Prosecutor O'Malley, Judge Sheehan, and all the other judges, they've worked really, really hard on getting those numbers down. The average, I'm going to take a whack at it, but the average daily population is about 1,600 over the year, somewhere around that number. You know that we got this diversion center and the central booking going into play, which we feel very confident that's going to drive that number down a little bit. So at what point, or are you designing this with that in mind, that we might whack off 300 cells if that be the case? One, and then two, if you are, at what stage of this process do you need to know that you're whacking off 300 beds?
Let me,
Mr. Applebaum, I
yeah,
have a quick comment in response to Mr. Mason. And just a reminder to the group that the numbers that we're actually operating at in the jail right now still are under sheriff's restriction, in that there are a number of sentenced misdemeanor prisoners that we are continuing to refuse on a daily basis that we're obligated to accept at some point when the emergency subsides. So that is going to be a significant number of additional inmates that will be coming into the facility. I think in our conversations, we have had conversations with stakeholders in the group that whatever the reductions that we get may be offset by the obligations that we're not currently fulfilling. And so the numbers that we're at may be a very good picture of where we will be consistently over time.
And I know I just said, and if that's the case, then we're not going to whack any cells off. But if we are going to, when does that decision have to be made? And is it designed, are you designing it so that's a possibility?
so let me start on that answer. And Jeff, I'm going to let you and Jason complete the answer. And I think, Mr. Mason, as you know, I have always strongly advocated for making this as small as we can make it. We've been talking about this nonstop. The answer is, and just keep in mind right now, we're at or around 1,600. To figure out what you have to have, and we've talked about the formula, you got to take that number, you got to divide it by 0.85, and that's why you're up around 1,900. I think 1,900 is based on 1,620 or something like that. Also keep in mind that it's, you have different kinds of units, because you can't, you have to maintain different types of units for different populations, so it doesn't fill perfectly well. Even if you had 1,600 people there at a given time, they don't occupy neatly into the certain space categories. So putting that all in mind, though, what you've heard here, and I'm going to let Jeff talk more about this, you've heard the term modularization. These units, these housing units, are basically roughly 48 unit blocks. So at a point in time, we can, as we design this, we can operate basically in blocks of 48. You can take out a housing unit, you can add a housing unit. We have a space for flexibility to add. But the question, Jeff, I guess I would say to you from a design perspective is, and this design process, and by the way, I hope it's not stretched out because of the site issue, but we are still about 10 months away from the point at which we will have the initial guaranteed maximum price based on a design. So within that time frame, we have another several months of schematic design. We have about 4 months of design development. Then we get into working drawings. At every step of the way, the later you get, you can still modify it. It gets tougher to do because you have more locked in. But with that, Jeff, why don't you, give us and Jason your view as to, and the point is, you can always even change it, even early on, But that then gets into the process of it costs money because it would be it actually a physical change. You don't ever want to do that. You want to plan it. So with that non-answer, Jeff, could you give us your view on that?
Yeah, so as we do the core is very centralized, and then the housing, the housing units are going to be arranged, probably on top of on top of the core services. So when I mean core services, I mean intake, I mean kitchen, laundry, the other base services of the facility. We'll also very necessarily locate medical services very close to that core as well. So then we sort of radiate out, and we make a determination. Okay, mental health housing should be on that same floor as as the medical, as the clinic and everything. And in some of our other facilities, the second floor above the core one is medical mental health, because by necessity those are one-story units. They're attached, they're co-located with medical, so medical staff has very quick access to those areas. Then the other housing maybe up one more level and then radiate outwards, I think. So what we'll do is, again, working very closely with the sheriff's department, what does classification look like? What units do we need? And we've determined for that 1904, but also what units would you need for 2400? And then what units would you need if you were able to come down to 1600? So as we went, if in fact it came back and said, look, guys, we feel good about doing 1600, sort of the outlier units would be the ones that we wouldn't continue with the design. And I think because of the modularity of the design, once we've designed one of the type, you're sort of designing them all. So it's not like we are having to go in and, if we've got, say, 7 of the same unit, we kind of design it once. We don't need to design it 7 times. We design it one time. And if it's a matter of adding one or deleting one, I don't want to say there's no effort in it, but I would say it's a more minimal effort in order to give you some flexibility as we come up to that. Jason, is there more you would add to that?
You can shell it, but not fit it out.
You can do that as well, that's right.
No, Jeff, I think you're spot on. If the numbers need to come down and we can reduce within the housing classifications as a group, that's fairly simple to do. It gets difficult if, say, right now we have a 48-bed unit and we want to come down, 8 beds and make a 40-bed. That's a little more difficult. So if we can stay within the module and within the classification group, it's relatively easy to do.
I think one other thing too, in the more recent ones we just opened in Indianapolis, one that's going to open in Detroit here, and the one we did in Nashville, they built somewhat over capacity. They went ahead and built more units than they need today. And their goal is that they don't necessarily want to fill those. And because of the modularity, they're able to actually shut those areas down. Or they're also saying, you know what, in a new pandemic, this gives us more flexibility to be able to disperse inmates further out in the facility. And there can be a staffing impact on that, obviously. But, they've made the decision to do some overbuilding, I guess we'll call it, or to build at that higher capacity, with the idea that today is the day that is least expensive to build it, and it gives them flexibility for the future. I know that there's also a lot of discussions, obviously, with the judges in those jurisdictions, that they've all got a collective goal to keep the numbers down, because even if you do build it larger, the more residents you have, the more expensive it is to run it. And the goal is to not have any more people as residents in the facility than are absolutely necessary.
This is Clerk Bird. Can I ask a question about that? So the example that you gave, and you said that they overbuild. Did they overbuild like a pod, a 48-bed facility? And if they're not using that, they shut that down? And how much was that upfront cost? So in other words, what's the cost per 48 pod that now is not being used? That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think approximately a pod is somewhere in the $8 million range or something to that effect. I could come back with more accurate information on that. And there, in the case of Indianapolis, there's a few pods. It's more than a couple. And they, in fact, will not operate those units while they don't need them. And they can shut down they can shut off the lights. They can shut off they could keep minimal heating and cooling in those areas, and they don't obviously have to staff them. because of some of the volatility, and I'll just use Indianapolis as a further example. Some of the volatility they've had with crime rates later, while they have made the effort to reduce beds, they're pushing, they're having to push back on, especially murder in that city. They've had the desire to still keep some other beds available. So the goal is to not use them. They're not using them all. They won't be using them all on day one. But if they do have to expand into them, then they by necessity don't have to do further construction down the road. So that, in that particular case, they've made the decision that, and I should also say the building also is set up for further expansion if they would really need it. But the idea that to not introduce a construction activity into the operating jail in the future is something that they desired to not have to do. And that today's building prices are probably going to, be superior to, or, more favorable than future building prices. So that they made the decision to try to build in a little more leeway. I can come back with some more details on what that overage is. And when I say overage, I shouldn't say overbuilt. I should say that it's built more to the future projection. They went ahead and rather than today's projection to the future projection. I think that's more accurate than overbuilt.
So I appreciate that. I think it would be helpful, at least for me, if you could come back with a cost in terms of per pod cost, and
Sure.
as well what Indianapolis said was the number of residents they were willing to house and what the number is that they're currently housing. And also what the monthly cost is, because as I would imagine, even though they've spent the upfront cost for building, which you said is approximately 8 million, there are still some limited monthly maintenance charges, as you suggested, for just keeping heat on, et cetera, so pipes don't burst or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, and
Oh,
and
thank you.
I could actually get that back to probably Jeff in the interim, that we could get to you sooner than the next meeting.
Sure,
But
whenever. No big rush, whenever. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
This is Colin Sweeney. I just wanted to reiterate that, I know the sheriff talked about where we might be with respect to numbers, but, for almost 9 to 10 months of the last 18 months, we haven't had trials and we haven't been operating normally. And so I guess the question I have for Jeff is, when do we need to decide on a hard number that needs to be submitted to DRC for approval? When does that decision have to be made on this current timeline? Because I think we're still not going to really know what the number will be for some time. And yes, you can overbuild, but it seems like that wouldn't be a prudent decision without really having a firm understanding of what the number will be once courts have been consistently operational. Because we got down to a much lower number early on in the pandemic, and it's continued to build because trials have been interrupted.
In a couple of minutes, I'm going to put a timeline up, and I'd like you to, I want to come just like in the next conversation. So hold that question for a minute. We'll come right back to it, because I want to show people exactly where the design process is. And then to get to your question, which is a great question, because eventually the state weighs in. And of course, one of the issues that I've discussed with you as a group is we have this issue. We can debate, and there's a lot of legitimate viewpoints on what happens with jail population. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways this could go. But at the end of the day, we have a process by which we submit our plans to the state, and they have to approve our plans. And I'm going to show you when that is initially. And here's the point. If we have a history, and if we are steadily at, let's just say that we steadily go at 1,600 or thereabouts, we don't show a drop off. We hope and pray there will be a future drop off. The difficulty is that just because we say it's going to happen, the state is going to say, we're looking at the history, and if you're not showing a trend, we're not going to let you build an undersized jail. So that's the issue. So we have to demonstrate to some degree, we have some flexibility, but at the end of the day, the state of Ohio is not going to let us build a jail that where we say, yeah, we're building a jail for 1,200, even though we have not, other than in the pandemic, been close to that. That's the issue. They'll give us some leeway. if we can demonstrate it, but they won't give us too much leeway. Jeff Goodale, first of all, we're about to go into another part of a conversation. Any questions from Jeff or Jason on what you've seen up here so far? I think it's a good, and once again, I want to point out, this is a first look at the concepts we are now dealing with. This is work that the sheriff, Rhonda, and the whole group has been looking at now every week. We have meetings, and we've had several design meetings, and these are the concepts we're at right now.
Jeff, I would just add, I think, the steering committee, I think made a clear statement about the type of facility that they want the new facility to be, that it's humane, it's normalized, it has the ability to, to provide treatment. It has the ability to provide contact, and is also, I think, really, a great place for staff to work, a place where people want to work. And so I think, we've taken that very seriously, and also work with the sheriff's department on the very necessary things. And while they also embrace those goals, we have some very necessary things to deal with as far as safety, as far as being able for sight lines, for anti-ligature, and for areas where, they've traditionally had problems in the old jail that we're going to work on solving. So, we worked very hard. I think we're getting there, in being able to really meld those two things together on a humane facility. Is also ultimately very safe for the residents, but also very safe for your community. And so, and I think everybody's been very dedicated to meeting those goals. And that's absolutely the direction that I feel that the project is going in.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And I'm going to come back to this slide in a minute, or a slide like this in a second. So let me get into the issue of project status and schedule, and it'll get to Mr. Sweeney's question. So there's different ways. I showed you a graphic before. This is just another graphic, sort of a process graphic. The top line, the steering committee started out with the MOU, made a series of initial determinations, and in purple has made determinations with respect to the jail project. I'm not going to review them all right now. We then did a series of things on the project delivery selection. We selected our programmer. We selected our project delivery system. We selected our criteria architect. And now it's time to select our design builder. So that's in the blue line. In terms of programming, we did our initial programming through DLR. We ended up, and we are not done with our initial programming on the courts. Our programming on the courts and everything other than the jail continues. But on the CCC, on the corrections facility, we had the initial program completed by for the jail and sheriff's program. Selected our criteria architect. We did have a delay during the COVID years there, the COVID months, but our criteria architect then commenced schematic design and commenced program confirmation, which you see now. And we're at the point right now where we now have an adjusted and confirmed program. Once again, subject to that number, that 1904 in that conversation, but we know, other than this precise number, we know what has to go into, and then we do agree now on what has to go into the jail and sheriff's administration. We know all the pieces, all the parts. And then finally, some other activities. Obviously, we started early on. The steering committee indicated the things that needed to be done to bring the jail population down, the interim steps, and we've talked about all of these. Some of these are discussed in these meetings, some are not. It's everything from bail reform to interim central booking to diversion to everything else we've talked about, to staffing, to Judge Sheehan's committee. And of course, the other major activity on this line is site selection. In terms of schedule, to get precisely to the question that Mr. Sweeney asked. So what this shows you is where we are right now. The three things we need to do right now is get the design builder on board. And I'll tell you why. I'll show you the tasks that they're going to do in pre-construction. We need to complete the site evaluation and select the site. We have a few more months that we can do of design, but there's a point in time where design becomes site specific. And if we don't know our specific site, the process will then ground to a halt because we have to continue with site specific schematic design process. At the conclusion of schematic design is we are going to have, with the state of Ohio, we're going to show them our program and where we are through an interim meeting. We're not going to get a formal approval at that point in time, but we'll have a direction. They'll understand where we're going. We'll understand their satisfaction with what we're doing. But to talk about the first formal approval, if you will, it's at the conclusion of schematic design. And this shows, and this is ambitious, this shows schematic design complete. It could be complete at the end of April by May 1 if we can know, we don't have to have a site acquired, but if we can actually know what our site is by the beginning of March. If we don't know what our site is, that we can't complete schematic design. If we can't complete schematic design, we can't get our package to the state. So now we can change it. We can change it because we will make more presentations to the state. And after we make an initial presentation, if we have a reason to bring the number down, we can go back with our second presentation and we can bring the number down and we can show them that. But that just gives you an idea of where we are from a schedule point of view.
Jeff, just one thought. Would it be wise for this group to have ODRC come here and give us their criteria and what they look at before we, I mean, in one of these timeline marks, just to have them here so all of us are on the same page with ODRC rather than someone interpreting what they want? Let's just have them here.
That's a good idea. I mean, obviously, we have had our initial meetings with them, our consultants, but we will see if they do that. They will be, they'll be cautious and guarded. But yeah, I think that's something to do.
It'll give us a good idea. And then we're not all here fighting about what the number should be. We kind of heard it from ODRC themselves, and then we can just determine based on their factors that they've explained to this group what it is. And then we know what the number has to be.
They're not going to tell you what the number needs to be, but they will tell you, they'll review your
The factors,
plans.
I'd love to hear them say what those factors are and those decision-making factors, rather than have someone say, this is what they're looking at. Let's hear from them. And then we can make that decision as a group, what that number should be.
We could ask them.
Yeah, I think it's wise.
Okay, we can ask them if they'll do that. Good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, if we're all okay, we can do one of two things here because we're going to take a break. We have one more segment here about the design builder. We're going to take a break when we go out for the executive session. We could take a break right now if you need it, or we can keep going. You guys okay to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay,
Keep
we'll
going.
keep going. Okay, thank you. So it's now time to talk about the design builder. Let me first of all remind everybody on the role of the design builder. So if you look at the chart, you know, we are the county, the owner. We retained our programmer, DLR, that did the initial program. We retained the criteria architect. Now, everything within that green oval is the design builder. The design builder itself retains the architect of record. So the design builder holds the contract with the architect of record. The design builder will hold the contract with all the myriad of subcontractors. And there will be many dozens of subcontractors on this project. Dozens and dozens and dozens of subcontractors on the project. At this point in time, the team that we are hiring is the design builder and its architect of record. We obviously will not know who those subcontractors are until packages are ready, until they are competitively bid. Open book, as we've talked about. So just a reminder, what does the design builder do? They hold the contracts with the architect, and they take the risk, by the way, of that architect's work. And they hold the contracts of all the subcontractors. through the architect of record, they will complete the detailed design. HOK will do all of the concept design. They will do all the design development. All the elements of what have to be in this building will be in their design development documents. The architect of record then will take that and convert it into working drawings. It's largely a mechanical function, but a very critical one. The design builder will provide at the appropriate time on an open book basis, a guaranteed maximum price based on the DD documents. They've already provided us financial information that we are in negotiation on, if we keep going, on what they propose as their fee, their staff costs, their contingency, that we can, on an open book basis, that we can compare to multiple other projects. They will ultimately competitively bid or competitively price all subcontractor work. There will be responsibility for implementation of a very robust inclusion plan, DEI plan, which I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes, and they're going to complete all work based upon a guaranteed price and schedule. They're critical now because they provide a range of pre-construction services. They're the ones who are going to do the detailed cost estimating of what we are preparing right now. They're the ones with the knowledge and the expertise. They're the ones who can reach out to subs and get pricing. So as we look at sites, we need them on board to help us with those very detailed exercises. In terms of the selection process, I'm going to have Nicole talk us through that process.
Okay, similar to how we presented to you when we selected HOK, we're just going to go through a couple slides on where we were. Design build is a little different. There's a two-step process, which is defined by county code. And so we followed the two-step process where we first issue an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. So the first item that they submit to us is purely their qualifications. There's no price component to it. And so that went out in September. We had a pre-bid conference, which is, again, per our county code that we do in order to interested parties come and are able to ask us questions, anything like that. The qualifications were due in November. We did extend it a little bit to try to encourage some additional competition. We've done significant outreach to different contractors, Jeff and his team, along with HOK, really trying to promote our project and seeing what else is on the market, who else is out there who would be interested in the project. So we did leave it out a little bit longer than usual. The qualifications were due. We met briefly as a committee. Only one set of qualifications came in. So we met, discussed that it was worthy of continuing with that firm. And so they were issued the RFP to respond to, which is the request for proposals, the second step in this two-step design build process. So the RFP was issued. The RFP was in draft form as part of the RFQ. So the companies did know what was coming and knew what they were going to need to respond to on the second time. So those came in the middle of December, and we actually interviewed the design build team virtually because it was right around the time we were seeing COVID spike again, and had a virtual meeting. The selection committee is shown up there. Those are the folks that participated in the scoring, the interviews, and this was a set of internal county folks, and then also some people from the steering committee that had expressed interest in being on the selection committee. Next slide, Jeff.
Can we ask a question for a quick second?
Sure.
Was there anybody from the city on that selection committee, or was the city
What we
involved?
did,
Judge.
we went to the at the last steering committee meeting. I asked for volunteers from the steering committee if you were interested. And I'm going to point out that given all the volunteers that were interested, I then sent out 2 emails and asked people to if they had an interest. So everybody was contacted. We tried, and Judge Early
Yes, I was on the
was on
selection
the steering
committee
committee.
for the city of Cleveland, and the representative for the mayor at that time also asked me to sit on behalf of the city. So on behalf of Barbara Lang Henry, I also sat.
So thank you, Judge Early. On behalf of Mayor Bibb, certainly as we move forward, we would like to participate in future selections and participate in the process as we move forward.
Okay, I appreciate that. Once again, the most I can do is invite, but you'll always have the invitation. And I'll make sure that if I don't hear from anyone named Griffin, that I'll reach out to everyone named Griffin to make sure. that
And
you're
Jeff,
involved.
just to be sure, I know it was a pretty busy year last year for a lot of people in the city
Yes.
and a lot of transitioning taking place. But just as we talk about city, there's always the, judicial branch, the executive branch, but then also we'll have a representative from our council at all times. I know my colleague Kerry McCormick is here, so
Yes.
between he and I, we'll always make sure that a city
Right.
presence is here.
There was some questions that were asked while this is being live streamed. There's some chat going on. One of the questions that was asked on the live stream was, are there people representing the city of Cleveland in this room? And they also asked who here is a resident of the city of Cleveland. I want to point out for everybody that there are 4 representatives in the room that represent city functions. So we have obviously the mayor's office, president of council who's here, the chief of the municipal court, and we also have the clerk of courts from the city. So we have those 4 positions here. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about whether they live in the city, but that was the question that was asked. So but we'll make sure we reach out on any future work on this.
Hey, Jeff, it's Michael Malley. I think the resident should realize, though, that this is a county facility, not a city facility.
That's correct. And I'm just pointing out what the question was. And we, and 4 of the 8 do represent, are from city functions. And everyone's from the county, by the way.
Next slide, Jeff. Uh-oh.
That should be.
Jeff, can you hear me? Is anybody speaking now?
Okay, why don't you go? I think we have a few people out here.
They're making their way back.
Who's there?
Chef's gonna go chase some people down.
Is Mike still with us?
We're going to continue, and I'm sorry about that technical glitch, but I think you had a few more
Yeah.
things to talk about, Nicole.
Sure. So this is the evaluation I was talking about on the RFP. You can see the categories that we reviewed and the scores that we gave them. Note, there's a couple where, you know, the points were a little bit lower than perfect. And so those are the things we did focus on now moving forward with negotiations, that just talking through, you know, who they're giving us on staff and really flushing out their methodology. And so this gave us some opportunities to understand what we need to work on with the design build team as we negotiate.
And 1 second, because one thing technically you do look at, so I want you to be focused on, this was the criteria for selection. Pretty obvious, experience with similar tasks, diversity and DEI, and I'll talk more about that. The firm's experience and the experience of the individuals in this type of a project, their support, their whole project methodology, location, ability to maximize what's happening locally, which we'll talk about, and their pricing proposal, which we're talking about now. We did have meetings with them afterwards, and they have already bolstered some of the things that we were concerned about, and not really concerned, but just we said that's good, it could be great, and they've really been very responsive on that score.
The next slide. So this just tells you a little bit about who they are. And the top left is the core team. So that's kind of the project management team. You'll see that they're coming from different firms. They formed a joint venture, which is that CCJP, they're calling themselves. So that's a joint venture between Gilbane, Hunt, and Ozane. And so you'll see the staff represented is from multiple firms. However, the company that we'll be contracting with is the joint venture itself. So the core team is up in the left. On the bottom is their diversity, equity, inclusion committee. So this spans multiple firms too. These are the folks that are going to specifically be meeting and making sure that we're hitting those goals. And then the right side is pretty small if you're trying to read it, but it is kind of their making sure that we're hitting what sets them apart, you know, that was right from their proposal. So I thought this was a good summary of, you know, what we reviewed in the proposal, a high level look at what makes them a good selection for us. Next slide, Jeff. I think that's it.
I think that's for me now.
So
So
if there's any
yeah.
questions on, you know, our process or selection, happy to answer those. Jeff might go into a little more detail just about why we think we got one firm submitting.
So let me first of all talk about we knew going in that it would be difficult. It's highly competitive to get jail builders right now. It's very difficult in this market. I'm going to give you a comparison, by the way. This just came out. New York, now, of course, you do make some adjustment for prices in New York, some. New York is doing 4 jail projects, city jail projects. The first one is 800, and it's designed for a 880 capacity. Keep in mind, we're talking about 1904, and you've seen our kind of budget, which is in the 500 plus range. That first jail that New York has right now, their budget is $1.8 billion for 880. They are planning 4 jails, and we need to get, you know, our team together, because at the national scale, we compete for talent. There are 4 jails. Each one has they're each the same. They're each about 880. Their budget is $6 billion for 4 jails. And that total population, I mean, think about it, 880, 1.5 to 1.8 billion each. And we're doing something which is well over well, which is at least double that, let's say it that way. So that just gives you some comparison concept. We knew going in, and we canvassed the country for builders because we knew that there were really only 4 builders. There's no regional builder. Nobody who is regional here is based here and just has a regional business here. They can joint venture and they'll be contractors and on teams. No one could lead this effort because they would not have had the experience, and they certainly wouldn't have the bonding capacity for a project like this. There are 4 national players who historically have done work in Cuyahoga County in this level and have the bonding capacity. The issue we had was one of them, a major player, and I'll tell you, it was Turner. Turner was the party that built the hotel, built the convention center. They have a very good market position. They made a national decision, a company decision right before this project, that they would no longer be in the business of building jails anywhere. We tried to convince them to propose, but they're not proposing on jails anywhere in the country. So they were out. A second player, a major player with the binding capacity, Whiting Turner. When we get to the courts, they'll be active, but they do not do. They don't have the portfolio. They don't do jails, and did not have an interest. The other 2 players are Gilbane and Hunt. For a project of this size, they determined to joint venture and to get the best of both companies doing it. The good news is, because our project delivery system is open book, we are able to they can't just take the position of being the only player and take advantage of that fee-wise, because we do have on an open book basis what their fee, their general conditions, their staff costs, their requirements. We get to see that all. We get to negotiate and look at that. We get to compare it to other comparable projects and convince ourselves that we are getting a market rate deal, which we are. Frankly, fortunate to have them. And of course, all the trade contracts will be competitively priced and bid. So that'll all be open book and we'll see it. In terms of the team itself, this is the team, the core parties, the commitment to Cuyahoga County. And by the way, this is not subcontractors. This is just everybody in their management team. Very large commitment to local players being involved on the design side and the management side. Very strong commitment to diversity and inclusion. Very strong depth of resources. 48.18% of this team represents a diverse entity, and these are not duplicated. So of the players and the percentage of work on this team, 21.16% is SBE, 19.34% is MBE, 8.68% is WBE, and this is of the management team. This has nothing to do with the subcontractors, where the commitments will be very high, and these are not duplicated. If you're registered if you're an MBE, you don't also get credit as an SBE. So this is an extraordinary commitment on the management team and the design team. A little bit more of a look. Here you have how it's going to be organized. Gilbane Hunt, the construction management partnership. They're doing it in collaboration with Ozan and TMG, both MBEs. And then on the design team, the architect of record is local Bowen. They have a strong national partner in HDR, and there's a whole group of small regional design professionals that will be on the design team. And then you see the CM staff augmentation, once again, representation in the DEI community. So it's a very strong team, but it's a very experienced team. This team has over $8.8 billion of experience in Cuyahoga County projects. The average length of experience of these companies is 50 years in Cuyahoga County. And these teams, their staffs, not necessarily all working on this job, but these companies represent over 450 prime staff members that live in Cuyahoga County. So this is a big commitment. They have very relevant, direct, and recent jail experience. The leader of the joint venture, Gilbane, and the lead, not the lead designer, but the lead national designer working with Bowen, they recently just completed the Franklin County Correction Center, which is one of the projects we're touring. A very recent experience by Gilbane. The other very recent experience near us is the Marion County Justice Center, which we mentioned earlier today. Our team member HOK is working on that, along with K2M, which is part of the team. And Hunt is the other major joint venture partner, national partner. So they did Marion. So the two closest large facilities recently done are comprised of these two partners. So they have great experience. Once again, this is just a reflection of the county goals and the voluntary workforce goals. We expect these to be exceeded by this team, but we expect them to be exceeded in very relevant ways. You can't read this, but they've already started on their target contracting strategy. They've already laid out key areas of the work for subcontracting, where they think they're going to get minority experience, WBE, MBE, SBE experience. One of the key things I'm not going to get into, but we've encouraged them to use a design assist strategy. About 30 or 40% of this project is going to be design assist. It's a methodology that was not even available in public contracting 10 years ago. But now 40% of major projects are design assist. Minority and small businesses are underrepresented in design assist construction. We're going to make a special effort to bring them and target small and minority businesses to be on design assist teams so they have an experience that they have not had before, which is going to be really relevant for the future in the minority community. We've looked at their process, looking at our executive orders and the disparity study and matching it. It starts out with subcontractor and workforce goals, developing strong communication strategies, and then equity responsiveness by monitoring. And there'll be constant monitoring of not only the numbers, but the relevance of the contractors. They have a DEI playbook that they talked to us about. We started talking to them about their community outreach program and their tracker compliance program. We've even gone through and they've done an initial look at this in terms of workforce. We know there's going to be more than 1 million man hours, well over that. And we've already looked at how they are laying out the different packages and where they think they will get workforce, minority, female, and county resident workforce. And they've already laid this out, laid out the strategy. We did a great job of getting numbers on the Hilton Hotel project. The county did on the convention center project. We think we'll not only get the numbers here, but we'll also advance it because we're going to have very important and relevant experience in areas of contracting that minorities and others typically have not done in the past. So we're very encouraged by this program. So that is a little bit about the team. We highly recommend advancing with this team. We need their support. So that leads to the determination, and this is the determination for the committee. The steering committee determines that the selection criteria that you saw is appropriate and further determines that the Gilbane Hunt CCC joint venture team doing business as Cuyahoga County Justice Partners in association with Ozanne and TMG satisfies the selection criteria and hereby recommends that Cuyahoga County proceed to negotiate and finalize an acceptable agreement with CCJP for design build services, provided, as always, that the agreement contains commercially reasonable terms and conditions, which we're working on, and also includes a robust plan for diversity and inclusion that is, and I'll point out that it's fully documented. So that's what's before the committee. First of all, did you look at the comment sheets? Is there any public comment here that someone signed in on this issue? Yes, sir. Excuse me? Okay, there's going to be 2 times you can comment today. One time just generally later on. This is specifically a comment just on this issue. Does your comment on this issue? Yes. Okay, if you could come up. Are you signed in? Well, just come up and identify yourself at the microphone.
Well, good morning, Justice Steering Committee. My name is Regis Bunch. And to give my public comment in regards to this determination and what has all transpired today, I don't know how long I have.
3 minutes.
Oh, good. It's just highly concerning that we're spending so much money on one building and trying to say that this is what is going to be helpful, healthy, the answer for our community. The consultant talked about the Nashville jail. The Nashville jail finished in May of 2020. I was at Vanderbilt University when the jail was being worked on. It was supposed to be the answer. When that jail opened in 2020, it was 2 months after the pandemic started. And 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, that jail has over 350 people with positive tests for COVID-19 and over 750 folks under restriction in the Nashville jail. That means the design of that jail failed because all the people were thinking about in that moment was, how do we build up a jail? But what the community needs is community-based systems of care. A sheriff is not a mental health professional. A sheriff is not someone who has the expertise or the know-how to say, if you have schizophrenic tendencies or have these mental health crises, therefore they have the tools to handle that. A jail does not have that environment to handle these situations. The Nashville jail is learning that the hard way because now they're dealing with the pandemic and they're dealing with people with mental health crises at the same time. That means that jail is going to fail. Cuyahoga County, we have the opportunity to now think bigger and larger and not say we have to build a jail just because we have to build a jail. How do we get community-based treatment centers in Lee Harvard area where I pastor? There's more liquor stores, but there are no beds for mental health treatment. Beds, Buckeye area. All of these areas need what y'all are talking about, but not in a jail format. They are needed in a treatment-based format. Right next door to my church is a liquor store. But what also you cannot find is treatment in a bed-style facility. And so to the county, if you need to build something, it does not have to be a jail. You can build treatment that doesn't come with cuffs. You can build treatment that can come with the care that our folks are going to need, not just today, but down the road. Nashville is learning this lesson the hard way. Excited to build something, excited to think they know what they were doing. But when that first COVID came through, now they don't know what to do with almost over $1 billion facility because that facility cannot answer the pandemic question. So I want to encourage us, all of us, to think, how can we include thinking bigger and in a more zip code way? Treatment needs to be in 44121, 44128, 44105. We need more treatment, not more jails. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do want to simply point out that the jail is not to the exclusion of anything you're talking about. And that's, I think, foremost on the minds of all the steering committee members. That's why we're focusing so much on all the alternate methods of keeping population out of the jail. We've had 13 steering committee meetings, and most of what we talked about in those first meetings is everything that you're talking about. So it's a good message, and I think we're mindful of it. And but it doesn't mean that we can't not replace the jail, which is the unfortunate thing that we do have to face. Is there any comment, though? Anyone signed in on this issue? That was really more the general comment. Okay, then I'm going to entertain any discussion by the steering committee on this proposition.
Jeff, just one question on discussion on that. And I appreciate all the work that the committee worked on this issue. The question I have is, only one person applied and you explained why. And I'm just curious, how long did you keep the bid open to apply? That's all. So the public knows, what's the length of time that open bid was theirs to people apply? And I don't know, and you may have said it, I don't recall.
Yeah.
Jeff, if you go back to that first process slide,
Yeah.
on the right side is those bubbles. It gives dates. You're going the wrong way. There we
I'm
go.
going the wrong way.
Now we got it.
I'm going the right way.
Yeah, now we are.
I was.
One more. One more.
Page
There you go.
51.
So the RFQ was put out, is it September 21st? My eyes are failing me too. But, and then it was, the RFQ was due November 18th, I believe that says. So that's the time that it was on the street.
Yeah. And let me just point
And
out.
we were definitely talking well before this to the market. So I wouldn't even say, you know, when it hit the streets on September 21st, it was not a surprise or new or unknown. I mean, we had been probably for the last 6 months, you know, telling people it was coming. And so I think people were well aware before that, but officially those are the dates.
Judge, we talked to every jail builder in the country. We had HOK, we had DLR. We were talking to everybody. There's no jail builder in the country that doesn't know about this project. The difficulty is, and we also talked to every regional contractor.
Right.
Can you find yourself? I mean, you know the list of regional contractors here. We said, can you get yourself a national partner? And for various reasons, you know, the local partners could not take. They didn't have the expertise. The national folks are incredibly busy. One of the things I'm actually worried about, if we didn't go forward, we could even lose. I don't want to lose this design builder. It says we've done everything humanly possible.
I just want to, I mean, I just want to make sure, I mean, is 3 months, is it a 3-month period approximately was open?
We kept it, we extended it and extended it.
Okay.
We extended it twice.
And is that typical for something like this?
No, typically, well.
Is it shorter
like
time
this.
frame or longer?
No, this is longer. So our
Longer than
county process
Okay,
used to be 3 weeks. It's gone to 30 days now, and we've exceeded that by double.
Okay, that's all my,
Yeah.
thanks.
Jeff, if you know, can you comment on why one jail builder has dropped out of the business generally? And then secondly, should we be concerned at all about cooperation or coordination between other potential bidders?
Should we be concerned about what?
Concerned about cooperation between other potential bidders?
Yeah, both questions. So I mean, I mentioned this, the player that dropped out of the business that we thought would be a major player and wanted to be, their local organization, their state organization wanted to bid on this project. It was Turner Construction Company, which is the largest regional builder. They made a decision at the national level, their CEO, that they would no longer be involved in detention projects. And we argued it, you know, we tried, their local folks tried, they wanted to build this jail, they wanted to propose to build this jail, but they dropped out, and it has something to do with their perception of the kind of work they think they want to be, and I'm not going to answer for them. They're the ones who dropped out. I am not concerned about how this acts in terms at the subcontractor level. At the subcontractor level, as you know, from your recent prior experience, the county has a very robust requirement and process for competitive pricing, competitive bidding. It's all open book. It is not closed, sealed bidding, which actually gave rise to problems. We've gone through the whole reason why it's open book. So we will see all of the bids, all of the proposals. We'll be able to weigh them all. And we think there will be robust competition for the pieces and parts of the project. It's just the issue of the overall guarantor of the entire enterprise that is the issue. Okay.
So Jeff, if I
yeah.
understand what you're saying, we shouldn't be concerned at the subcontractor level, but perhaps we should be concerned at the prime contractor level?
Well, I wouldn't be concerned at the prime contractor level because thankfully we did get a good proposal from a prime contractor. So the Gilbane, we did get a good proposal, and keep in mind, part of that proposal is the sealed pricing proposal. And we have, and we've been able, and we're looking at negotiating that, but we do have we have a proposal that if you were to line up other jail projects, if you were to line up Indianapolis, and if you were to line up Detroit, and if you were to line up Columbus, you're going, in fact, if you line up our past projects, because we can look at bonding rates, we could look at staff costs, we can look at fee, we can line it all up, and we can ensure objectively that we're getting proper pricing at that level.
And if we're going to negotiate to that rate, I mean, we know what the standards are for some of these fees and rates, like Jeff said, in jail projects and in local projects. Yeah. And so, you know, we are looking to them to meet. And you'll see on the scoring where their price proposal didn't get full scoring because we felt that there was some work that we could do with them, and they are talking to us.
They have been responsive. We've been able to lower numbers, and we've been able to do it on a competitive basis. I have to tell you, they would have much preferred that they had competition. because if they had competition, if others had proposed, they would have felt comfortable about their pricing. Now they know that we're going to look at it through a microscope now because we have to, and we've been doing that, and it's been very successful so far. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, then let me move back to our slide here. I would ask for a motion by a member of the steering committee in support of this determination. Keep in mind, well, where's County Councilman? Mr. Griffin. Council, I said county, I meant to say city, yeah, president, because we do require a vote of 10 of 12. Can you, yeah, you're still the alternate. You haven't, we haven't taken you off of alternate status. Yeah, your nameplate's underneath. You see, we had it ready to go just in case. Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion by a member of the steering committee in support of this determination.
The sheriff will make that motion, Jeff.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor? Well, I think we can do this. I don't have to do this roll call. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. We have a 12-0 vote on this issue. Now, we're going to get into the all-important issue of the site. I'm going to do part of this in public, and then we're going to go into executive session, okay? And I understand there's been some chatter about this. There's a lot of people on the live stream chat that are all concerned. They think we've already selected a site. They were not aware of the process we have gone through. So I want to, and there's also been some discussion about this that was in the newspaper. So I want to be clear, and I'm going to reveal a few things because it's already out in the public, just to be very clear about where we are and what has happened on site selection before we go into executive session. So just by way of recollection, and for those who were not here as part of the steering committee early on, in the fall of 2020, we had made the decision, the steering committee had made the decision to go with a jail on a site located outside of the core of downtown. At the October meeting, there was a series of criteria proposed. And this is just the first page. There were, I can give it to you, but there were three or four pages of criteria. And these are criteria about things such as access to, how close is it to the downtown core where the courthouse is now and will likely be in the future, access to emergency services, access to public transportation, access to major thoroughfares, impact on neighborhoods. I could go on, but there's a whole series of criteria that we went through. It was proposed for the steering committee to review in October. Everybody took it. We asked for comments. We asked for thoughts from the steering committee, received some. At the next meeting in October 12, 2020, we had a final list of the criteria. We didn't weigh it. We didn't say this is 10 times more important than this, but it was the criteria that we had to consider. So the steering committee agreed on proposed site criteria and then authorized the county to, and I quote from the resolution, initiate the site exploration selection process. After we did that, in February, there was a first executive session. And in the first executive session on property, there was a meeting in executive session. And I'll reveal this because it's been revealed at that point in time. We've actually had two consultants, real estate consultants, looking at our criteria, gathered up a list of possible properties located throughout Cuyahoga County that could possibly meet the criteria. They were presented to the committee for discussion and comment. From March 5 to March 21, we said we are now going to engage in a public process to test our criteria and also see how the public would prioritize the criteria. So there was a presentation made, it had all of the criteria, and then it had a survey available. And we said to the public, you can now look at the criteria. We want you to rank it. What's most important to you? We want to get your comments and your feedback. I don't remember the exact number, but we had well over 200, do you remember, Ellis? 200 plus comments and thoughts, and we got the public's reaction to it, and we got their thoughts. And this is just the engagement on the criteria. We then went back to the steering committee March 25th, and we presented the public input. We said, look, here's all the criteria. Here's all the public input we have on the criteria. Here's how they rank it. Here's how they think about it. And we also incorporated that into the process of what our consultants were looking at and narrowing down properties. On June 10, 2021, we had a second executive session. Now, the consultants had gone back with information from this committee from the first session and came back. We had done more evaluation, more analysis, not me, but the consultants had. And at that point in time, two things happened. Number one, the list that they had was narrowed down. And it was narrowed down to the top 5 properties. And those 5 properties were presented in detail in this committee. There was also mention in that committee about the fact that we might do a parallel RFP process just to make sure there's nothing else out there in the marketplace, just to make sure that there might not be some owner, because we had heard through the grapevine and others that, well, maybe there could be other owners, other potential properties, others who might want to propose a property, and maybe it wasn't known that that was a viable choice. We wanted to do this with belt and suspenders. So what then happened, and I will tell you that we had those 5 properties. I will mention about the city's involvement. We did, after presenting the 5 properties, I did get a call from the city of Cleveland mayor's office, and the indication was you need to take one of the 5 properties off of the list because the city has another use that they're already moving forward on that property. So there was one property on that list that the city was about to act on and do other things on, which I'm not going to get into it, but I understand that's gone forward. So the list was reduced to 4, and 2 of them have been reported in the paper. I'm not going to get into it right now, but there's been reports on what 2 of them are. But from June 10 to the present, what has occurred is we have continued on the due diligence effort. That work has been led by Dave Lambert's here, but the county prosecutor's office has had a major role in leading that effort. No decision. First of all, the decision is not, it's your decision, but there's no first choice or second choice right now. It's looking at multiple factors. There's a lot of investigation required to understand, because there's no site that you can find that doesn't have issues or problems or concerns that can be overcome. You have to do geotechnical analysis. You have to do environmental analysis. You actually, you're going to have issues of zoning everywhere. You're going to have other issues that have to be thought about. I will point out that wherever this is cited, we are talking about, what are we talking about? 800 jobs, something like that. 800 between the sheriff's administration and we're talking about a $60 million payroll. Pardon? More like 1,000 jobs. So this is, this has economic impact wherever it ends up as well. So I just wanted to go through and make a statement that this is where we have been. And this is all the work that has been done. I don't know if any other member of the steering committee, before you go into executive session, wants to say anything else about this process so far?
No, the only thing
I left out something. I'm sorry, Judge. I left out something. One more step, belt and suspenders. We also said that, in case there's something else out there, we don't want to have, people talking in people's ears about other possible sites. We don't want there to be someone who claims something was left out. So we said, let's do a parallel public process, open book, and we're going to do an RFP. So there's an RFP out there. It says if anybody else has a proposed property that meets this criteria, and we listed all the criteria, you're free to propose it, and we'll consider it. And that's due on February 6th. That's the last piece of due diligence, other than looking at the specific sites. I'm sorry, Judge, go ahead.
No, the only thing I think it's just from following the comments that we've been hearing during this meeting is a fact that whatever site we select, I think it's important to get community engagement involved in that selection. So I think the community needs to know that that whatever this committee, when we decide or come up with a location, I do believe there has to be some community involvement. I think that would make people feel at least a chance to comment about that. And I think, I don't know if I'm the only one on this committee that thinks that, but I think there should be some community involvement mentioned
Actually,
or comment in that. And I just want to make sure the public understands that we're not just ignoring them.
Thank you, Judge. And we actually talked about this in prior meetings. It's actually built into contracts. It's built into my contract, HOK's contracts, and other contracts. So what happens, and I should have taken the next step. At a point in time, there's going to come a proposed site. No matter what the site is, there's going to be people that have thoughts and comments about that site. Whether it's about buffering, whether it's about how it fits into the urban fabric, whether it's about the design of the outside of the building, you name it. Whether it's about hey, understand the site, but is the RTA, is there enough RTA access? Do you have to, whatever it is, there's going to be comment. Once we know the site, we will have community engagement. We will have meetings. We will show at that point in time proposed designs, and we'll get the community. And this is different communities. It's both the community where it's located, but it's also the community of users, who have to get to it. And we will have those community engagement meetings. We talked about that from day one. And that's I should have mentioned that again, but it's absolutely part of the process.
I just want to make sure that's clear that the community knows that. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, this is Mike O'Malley. Jeff, are we going to be having a public vote on the location that is chosen?
Eventually, it depends on where I'm actually going to have Dave Lambert talk about this in executive committee. There's a few options we have as to what we do and the order in which we do it. Eventually, this committee does approve the site. The question is the process and the order.
Well, I would just like to state publicly, I think that should be a public vote of the committee. And that's my preference. Certainly, I will listen to other people's views, but I do believe this is a public building. I assume there's going to be options on multiple sites, and I think we as a committee owe it to the public to be transparent and to have that decision of wherever it will be located is a public vote.
I think ultimately, I don't think there's a question that ultimately there's a vote. I think it's a timing issue in the process, but I think that's something that there's more discussion as to how that operates, and also this is where we also have to mesh the steering committee process with the county's process. I believe I'm safe in saying there's no precedent for how we mesh the steering committee process in with the county process on site selection. So we have to talk through it a little bit, but I think your point is well taken. And I think there will be a vote and ultimately some form of a public vote on this, but we have to talk about the process of how that happens.
When you say a public vote, are you talking about the council voting on it, or are you talking about a vote of the people at election day?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about a vote of the people.
No.
Okay. Just that.
I'm not talking about a referendum.
No, but I do believe we should have a consensus where people express their views on how the site location ended up wherever it ends up, and that we express it publicly, because inevitably we're going to be out in the community. We're going to have to need to explain and for people to understand that this is why we felt it was the best location. And I think that's our obligation as, public officials. And, I don't have a problem doing that wherever the site is chosen. And I just think transparency is always the best option.
I think it's actually required by the MOU. I think the MOU says that one of the things that this committee votes on, and all your votes are public votes, is the ultimate site. So I think it's baked into the MOU.
That's good to hear.
Okay. Is there any other, before I take a roll call vote to go into executive session, is there any other comment from the steering committee on what we've said publicly? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to take a roll call vote to go into executive session then. Mr. Sweeney?
Jeff,
Yeah.
Mr. Gallagher? I'm sorry.
you have to kind of say the purpose, and it's for the acquisition of real estate. You go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the acquisition of real estate. Forgive me for interrupting.
You correct me. To go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the acquisition of real estate. As it does say on my slide, but I didn't repeat, so I apologize. Let me do it again. Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Gallagher, Judge Early, Ms. Bates, Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
and the other Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Okay. Judge Celebrezzi, Judge Sheehan.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert, Sheriff Phelan, Ms. Byrd,
Yes.
and Mr. Budish. Okay, then I'm going to ask everybody who is not delegated by your steering committee member to please leave the room, as we will now go into executive session. Can you Did we have any additional comment? No additional comment on the list. Okay, I think I need a motion to, what's the, Dave Lambert, you're the expert, the motion to
Come out of executive
come out of
session.
executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, back in the general session. I don't think we had anybody sign up for additional public comment. So let me just mention next steps, next meeting. Our process, and we'll have to make sure that this works for everybody. But our next meeting, right now, we're planning on it on February 10. We'll have a discussion about the venue for the next meeting. We are going to primarily at that meeting return to the conversation, which we have not been in literally since April last year. And this is the conversation where we left off on planning and programming for everything else that happens at the Justice Center. We focused exclusively on the Correction Center. Now we're going to go back. We'll see where we're at. We may have some update at that session on the jail. Not sure yet where we'll be or whether we'll go into another executive session, but that meeting will primarily be all about the courts. We will have DLR, our programmer, that team, they will be back. I don't know whether it will be in person or virtually because it all depends on where we're at in this pandemic. But the week before that, Judge Russo, I'm going to be talking to you and Judge Sheehan because we have to do those working group meetings. In April, we talked about these various levels of options. We're going to want to go through it, particularly with this in advance. We don't want to surprise you about anything that we may be talking about. So we're going to give you an advanced look at where all of that discussion is. Yeah, I'm meeting with you next week to talk to you about what we'll be doing, but obviously the meetings themselves will be run by the DLR consulting team. Okay? So that's the next step, next meeting. Unless there's any other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Well, thank you very much. I apologize for the long day and the technology glitches, but appreciate all of your efforts today. Thank you.